Let's start off with this Larry Elder thing. I got to be honest, I think there's so many extremely important stories right now. We've got obviously the Afghanistan stuff, which has been going on for a long time, especially with your expertise, Sean. We could talk about this. But then as we're coming in and sitting down, I saw this story, and for one, I'm like, this one makes me really, really mad for a few reasons. From Timcast.com, breaking: Larry Elder attacked by white liberal in gorilla mask throwing eggs. Now, personally, I don't know if liberal is the right word to use. It is kind of like the colloquial word used for like the opponents, but this person's a nut. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna. I guess until the mainstream liberals come out and condemn this actively, I don't know what else to say other than they're under the same umbrella. But the story is: California gubernatorial candidate Larry Elder was attacked by a white liberal in a black and pink gorilla mask in Venice on Wednesday. The mask-wearing leftist was throwing eggs and shouting as Elder walked by. The belligerent attacker also punched a member of Elder's entourage who was attempting to get them to calm down and step away. One of her friends also punched him in the back of his head as someone else threw an egg. Quote, "Put your hands on me again and I'll F you up," the ape-masked attacker was heard shouting. Another protester ranted to the media present that Elder, who is black, doesn't even like his own people. Quote, "A flying egg narrowly missed the back of recall candidate Larry Elder's head after it was thrown by an activist wearing a gorilla mask in Venice. A scuffle broke out and the candidate was escorted into an SUV," Kate Cagle, the journalist who filmed the incident, wrote in a tweet. Now, I'll tell you what really bothers me about this, aside from the fact these people are lunatics, is that if this was someone on the right wearing a gorilla mask and going up to a black Democrat, it would be the front page, number one, above the fold, New York Times, white supremacy.
That's exactly where I was going to take. I was thinking this the entire time as you were speaking. That if this were someone on the right, it would be national news. You'd have the Today Show out there interviewing people. Oh, he was wearing a red hat. That would be the dominant headline.
Oh, but I mean, no, but this is a gorilla mask.
And you approached this really, really fair, right? Like, well, this guy he's defined as a liberal, but he's probably just somebody that's struggling. Or I didn't see the news, but
right,
yeah, but yeah, it's just someone that's a little crazy, that not really a liberal, but if it were a conservative, you would get no such grace from anybody.
This is what they're saying, right? So the LA Times called Larry Elder the black face of white supremacy.
Yeah, it's insane.
Which is insane. And then a leftist wearing a gorilla mask throws eggs and punches someone in his group. Where's all of the headlines? Where's Don Lemon saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, white supremacy is alive in this country"? A white woman in a gorilla mask attacking a black. You don't see it because it's not about race, not about racism. All this critical theory stuff is just we want power, and the double standard's fairly obvious, isn't it?
Well, isn't this you just look at this and you're like, we need to break up. We need to break up.
Just go right to it.
We need to break up.
Someone threw an egg and we're done.
Yeah, we're done. We're done.
But think about it. What did you just say? You just said that the press controls the narrative. Until the right gets a way to control the narrative, they're always going to be in charge. I mean, they've spent the last century taking over academia and the press. I mean, of course.
Yep. You're so right. And I think for years what the dynamic was, at least for the last 15 or 20 years, the left would set their talking points. And what's interesting about the modern day left or the new Democrat Party is their talking points are set by 3 or 4 people at the top of their party, and they trickle down to the rest of the party, which is why a congressman in Western Pennsylvania espouses the same views as a congresswoman in Southern California, as in Southern Florida. They're all the same. So they set these talking points, and then in the past they'd use the media to amplify these talking points. But over time, as the market changed and stuff, you had Fox News created and talk radio, and conservatives had their alternative media. But what I think is so dangerous today is you've the same dynamic between Democrats setting their talking points and the media helping to elevate them. But now you have big tech who is censoring any conservative counterpoint. And I think one of the greatest threats that we face as a country today is the collusion between the modern day Democrat Party, big tech, big business, and big media, to sort of take people's freedom away from them. And so you were talking about like some sort of alternative media. Hopefully over time we'll get there, but as long as big tech can shut your show down. I mean, look at this stuff. They could shut your show down tonight if they wanted to.
Well, I will say a lot of people have taken for granted what the internet has given them. Or I shouldn't say it that way. That's the wrong way to put it. You can't go on Tucker Carlson's show and say a lot. You can't. There's a lot of stuff you can't say on Fox News.
That's true.
We actually have way more leeway here on YouTube. But there's also things they can say that we can't because YouTube has editorial guidelines, which are not about community standards. So that is a very serious problem. But I'll tell you, one of the biggest problems is, and you can see how the left reacted to this, especially in how they threw eggs at Larry Elder. The right never fought back. The American right seemed to think that appointing judges solved the problem, and it didn't. The cultural institutions are where everything comes from and flows from, and big tech is involved in that. And I think a really good example of the problem, the New York Times can just take any story, say it, and every conservative immediately pivots to address whatever the New York Times told them to talk about. So there can be some big news, like right now, Larry Elder gets attacked. This white liberal, she's a racist, white supremacist. I'll say, absolutely, how dare she do that? And you're not going to see it in the media. Joe Rogan, right? We'll get into this in a minute in greater detail, but Joe Rogan talks on his Instagram channel about what his doctors prescribe him, and CNN says he's taking livestock medicine. Even though people don't trust the media, the media has very little trust across the board. Even with that, still they set the conversation. And something, I'll tell you what's interesting, the Ukraine gate stuff with Joe Biden. When that stuff was going down, and I was researching what was going on with Burisma, the corruption of the Biden family, I found a lot of damning information, but I had to go to Eastern European sources and vet them, and it was very difficult because I'm like, I don't know who these people are, right? I don't know if these are credible sources. I don't know why I should trust CNN for that instance, in that circumstance. But the interesting thing was, this is considered fringe because CNN didn't mention it. If CNN doesn't talk about it and you do, it's irrelevant, fringe, conspiracy, crackpot nonsense. Regardless of whether or not CNN or the New York Times or any of these outlets is talking about something true or false, if you talk about anything off the path of their controlled narrative in opposition or support, then you're in fringe territory. That's something that needs to change. The right needs to figure out how to actually set the tone and set the conversation.
Well, you have to also ask, is the press doing politicians' bidding, or are politicians doing the press's bidding? I have a friend who was a reporter, and he said he was in rooms where he watched reporters bully politicians into positions.
Oh, yeah.
So
look at Fauci and the mask thing.
Look at the last 5 years. I mean, from 2016 to 2018, the Republicans had the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative. They couldn't get anything done. And then right-wingers were like, oh, well, that's because the left. I'm like, yeah, that's because you guys thought you had power, but the left was still in power.
Yep.
And until people start realizing that and start looking for alternatives,
look at Russiagate. The mainstream media comes out and says, oh, Russia, because Hillary Clinton said so. And the Republicans in 2016 to 2018 were like, well, we should reasonably look at this. And then Ukraine gate happens and it's nothing. This is the problem. The Republicans, what I think it was? I think that we had a uniparty for a long time. Republicans and Democrats, basically the same thing. So the Republicans were like rolling their eyes. We don't care about Trump. We don't want any of this. But the populist right gaining more and more power, and they're forced to reckon with it. So I think next year, 2022, we might see something really, really fascinating. That being said, we might see something crazy if Larry Elder becomes governor of California.
Yeah, yes, and by the way, there are so many angles to talk about this very problem from. But what you were talking about Joe Biden and Burisma in Ukraine and the whole I said fire the prosecutor who is investigating my son or my family for corruption, or you don't get the $1 billion. Right? That is a clear cut quid pro quo.
We'll have to break that one down though.
Sure,
Yeah.
But I'm just saying from 30,000 feet, right? You've got Joe Biden having a conversation with the president of Afghanistan 6 weeks before the withdrawal, 4 weeks before the collapse of Kabul. The conversation went, hey, talking to the president of Afghanistan, paint an overly rosy picture of what's happening on the battlefield, essentially lie to the world to make it seem like the Taliban isn't as strong as they are, or you don't get the military assistance. But it's essentially the same thing, except for the media just flies cover for him the whole time. I can
make it very, very simple. I love asking this question, and I'm going to ask it now of all of you. Do you think that if Dave Rubin, after he got suspended on Twitter, that Twitter was scared He would show up to Twitter HQ with a mob of classical liberals with pitchforks and torches and bricks, start violently attacking people. Do you think Jack Dorsey was like, guys, we suspended Dave Rubin. It's going to get violent here. We have to unban him. You shouldn't have done this. No, absolutely not. Do you think Jack Dorsey had that conversation when they talked about banning Antifa? Yes. When they say, okay, we've got these people advocating for violence on our platform, what do? If we start banning them, they're going to come after us. They're going to show up at the headquarters. They're going to smash things. The cops will be powerless. So here's what happens. When you have these people showing up throwing eggs at Larry Elder, you have these politicians getting attacked. When the right holds a rally in the Pacific Northwest, Antifa shows up and starts attacking people and shooting at them. And now I'll tell you this, it's definitely escalated to the point where I would consider a lot of it to be mutual combat in the Pacific Northwest. But if people say, I'm going to have a free speech rally, it's permitted, leave us alone, and you show up, you started the fight. The right doesn't have any kind of threat factor. They shouldn't. The left shouldn't either. But so long as cops are unwilling to do anything about it, people are going to continually fear what the left does. We were talking about this the other day, that, why is it these institutions like the New York Times or whatever ultimately become woke? Well, it's because the regular people there are too scared to say anything because the leftists are just terrifying and fringe lunatics. And there's very few of them, but everyone's scared of them. And that's it. So long as people are scared and unwilling. So my respect to Larry Elder, calmly walking and saying, ignoring them.
Well, can I posit a theory on that?
Sure.
I think the left likes chaos and the right, even if they don't know how to say it, they like order. I mean, look at right-wing cities, small towns. You're not having an Antifa problem. Look where the left governs. It's a mess. It's always a mess. And why does the left like disorder like that? Because the more disorder there is, the more power that they can take to themselves and say, hey, we're doing this, even if they're not doing that. And they may even want that disorder. Maybe that's what happened last year. They knew that they could grow their power if they let all of this insanity run through.
Well, I'll say this. I'll say this about what you were saying. It's not like this is some crazy theory, right? Like the left has. If you would have told me that the modern day Democrat Party 4 years ago would be advocating for a position of defunding the police wholesale, right, and just anti-police rhetoric, right?
They walked that one back quick.
They did, but it has consequences, and you're seeing, as you mentioned, like crime in almost every major American city, Philadelphia, in my case in Pennsylvania.
But they also told the police to stand down so they could have more chaos.
I agree with you. I'm just saying that their anti-cop rhetoric, coupled with defund the police, coupled with mixed signals from leadership, creates chaos in their cities, right? Primarily Democrat power centers, and you see that empirically as well with rise in murder, rise in crimes, things like that.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.